We're moving on to Shaw, the Doctor's Dilemma, which I'm just going to introduce so you get a bit of a sense of how to follow what's going on, a bit of the context of the scene. Shaw based the play on actual events and people, primarily Sir Elmeth Wright, principal of the Institute of Pathology at St. Mary's Hospital, Paddington. Wright had degrees in both literature and medicine from Trinity College, Dublin. He was later nicknamed Sir Almost Wright. The significance of certain body cells reacting in a measurable way to an invasion by bacteria would have a huge importance for bacteriology and immunology, but it was taken up by Wright's junior at St. Mary's, Alexander Fleming, financed by money made from Wright's vaccine. So it's an interesting connection there. Around 1905, he made headlines by claiming to have found a method of measuring the protective substances in human blood. Shaw's imagination had already been fired by phagocytosis, which he called a, quote, suggestive biological romance. And now he got interested in Wright's concept of how opsonin butters the phagocytes with a natural sauce. Wright coined the term opsonin from the Greek opsonio, which means I prepare food for, and he was knighted in May 1906. He sent Shaw a pamphlet in 1905 on tuberculosis inoculation and invited him to visit his laboratory. During one late-night lab break, a discussion arose over whether to admit a new patient just arrived that day for treatment using a new experimental method. And Shaw asked, what would happen if more people applied to you for help than you could properly look after? Wright said, we should have to consider which life was worth saving. Shaw made this the dilemma at the heart of his play. Ridgeon has to choose between two patients dying of tuberculosis. Should he give the precious single dose of his inoculation to Blenkinsop, a worthy, hard-working, but plodding country doctor, or to Dubida, a charming and gifted, but thoroughly dissolute, lazy, and unrepentant artist? And a further dilemma is, when should he give it? If it is given in the negative phase of the patient's system, it will kill him. But detecting the positive phase isn't easy. This gives the play lots of suspense. Not to spoil it for you, but he opts to save Dubida because he's fallen in love with the artist's wife. But Dubida dies, likely because Ridgeon knew he was in the negative phase. Needless to say, he doesn't get the girl in the end. The scene you're about to see comes from near the beginning of the play, when Ridgeon is besieged by colleagues wanting to congratulate him on his knighthood. His old friend Sir Patrick, who has a skeptical, seen-it-all attitude to new science, is the visitor you'll see him talking to here, followed by a slew of wealthy and mostly corrupt physician friends. The most amusing is Walpole, who makes a brisk living from convincing people that they have blood poisoning and must have an entirely mythical organ he calls the nuciform sac removed. Why is Shaw so hard on doctors? One reason is that he suffered from a botched smallpox vaccine in childhood that left his face pockmarked for the rest of his life. Another, though, is his crusade for reform and against injustice, wherever he found it. In this case, the unregulated practices of doctors who could set whatever fees they liked in this period. Shaw and Wright had a mutually beneficial relationship. Wright saw Shaw as a great advertisement for his vaccine therapy. Shaw saw Wright as a way of combating the, quote, superstition that a playwright cannot be a biologist. You can judge for yourselves whether he succeeded.
Rather than the chairs, because I think the side might be better. Okay. So I'm doing a bit of emergency blocking so everyone can see better. So if you imagine there are two lovely armchairs in the consulting room of the Ridgeon, and we'll place you up on the table for that. If you imagine they are each in separate sort of lovely armchairs. And if you can't see it near that, you stand that as well.
You keep up your interest in science, do you?
Lord, yes. Modern science is a wonderful thing. Look at your great discovery. Look at all the great discoveries. Where are they leading to? Why, right back to my poor dear old father's ideas and discoveries. He's been dead now over 40 years. Oh, it's very interesting.
Well, there's nothing like progress, is there?
Don't misunderstand me, my boy. I'm not belittling your discovery. Most discoveries are made regularly every 15 years, and it's fully 150 since yours was made last. That's something to be proud of. But your discovery's not new. It's only inoculation. My father practiced inoculation until it was made criminal in 1840. That broke the poor old man's heart, Collie. He died of it. And now it turns out that my father was right after all. You've brought us back to inoculation.
I know nothing about smallpox. My line is tuberculosis and typhoid and plague. But of course, the principle of all vaccines is the same.
Tuberculosis. You found out how to cure consumption, eh?
I believe so, yes.
Ah, yes. It's very interesting. What is it the old cardinal says in Browning's play? I have known 24 leaders of revolt. Well, I've known over 30 men that found out how to cure consumption. Why do people go on dying of it, Collie? Devilment, I suppose. There was my father's old friend, George Boddington, of Sutton Coldfield. He discovered the open-air cure in 1840. He was ruined, driven out of his practice for only opening the windows. And now we won't let a consumptive patient have as much as a roof over his head. Oh, it's very interesting to an old man.
Oh, you old cynic. You don't believe a bit in my discovery.
No, I don't go quite so far as that, Collie. But still, you remember Jane Marsh?
Jane Marsh? No.
You don't?
No.
You mean to tell me that you don't remember the woman with the tuberculous ulcer on her arm?
Oh, your washerwoman's daughter. What's her name, Jane Marsh? I forgot.
Well, perhaps you've forgotten also that you undertook to cure her with Cox tuberculum.
And instead of curing her, it rotted her arm right off. Yes, I remember. Poor Jane. However, she makes a good living out of that arm by showing it at medical lectures.
Still, that wasn't quite what you intended.
I took my chance at it.
Jane did, you mean?
Well, it's always the patient who has to take the chance when an experiment is necessary. And we can find out nothing without experimenting.
What did you find out from Jane's case?
I found out that the inoculation that ought to cure sometimes kills.
But I couldn't have told you that. I've tried these modern inoculations a bit myself. I've killed people with them, and I've cured people with them. But I gave them up because I never could tell which one I was going to do.
Read that the next time you have an hour to spare, and you'll find out why.
Oh, bother your pamphlets. What's the practice of it? Opsonin. What the devil is opsonin?
Opsonin is what you butter the diseased germs with to make your white blood corpuscles eat them.
Well, that's not new. I've heard this notion that the white corpuscles, what's his name, Metchnikov calls them?
Phagocytes.
Ah, phagocytes, yes. Well, I heard this theory that the phagocytes eat up the disease germs years ago, long before you came into fashion. Besides, they don't always eat them.
They don't. Well, they do when you butter them with opsonin.
Gammon!
No, it's not gammon. What it comes to in practice is this. The phagocytes won't eat the microbes unless the microbes are nicely buttered for them. Well, the patient manufactures the butter for himself, all right, but my discovery is that the manufacture of that butter, which I call opsonin, goes on in the system by ups and downs. Nature being always rhythmical, you know. And that what that inoculation does is to stimulate the ups or downs, as the case may be. If we had inoculated Jane Marsh when her butter factory was on the upgrade, we should have killed her arm. But we got in on the downgrade and lost our arm for her. I call the upgrade the positive phase and the downgrade the negative phase. Everything depends on your inoculating at the right moment. Inoculate when the patient is in the negative phase and you kill. Inoculate when the patient is in the positive phase and you cure.
And pray, how are you to know whether the patient is in the positive or the negative phase?
Send a drop of the patient's blood to a laboratory at St. Anne's, and in 15 minutes I'll give you his opsonin index in figures. If the figure is 1, inoculate and cure. If it's under 0.8, inoculate and kill. That's my discovery, the most important that has been made since Harvey discovered circulation of blood. My 2 tuberculosis patients don't die.
And mine do when my inoculation catches them in the negative phase, as you call it.
Precisely. To inject a vaccine into a patient without first testing his opsin is as near murder as a respectable practitioner can get. If I wanted to kill a man, I should kill him that way.
Will you see a lady that wants her husband's lungs cured?
No, haven't I told you I will see no one? I live in a state of siege ever since it got about that I'm a magician who can cure consumption with a drop of a syrup. Don't come to me again about people who have no appointments. Tell them I can see no one.
Well, I'll tell her to wait a bit.
You can tell her I can't see her. And send her away to UK.
Well, will you see Mr. Cutler Walpole? He don't want a cure, he just wants to congratulate you.
Oh, of course. Show him up. Stop. I want 2 minutes with you. Emma, or Emmy, as Mr. Walpole's... ask Mr. Walpole to wait just 2 minutes while I finish our consultation.
Oh, he'll wait all right. He's talking to the poor lady.
Well, what is it?
Don't laugh at me. I want your advice.
Professional advice?
Yes. There is something the matter with me. I don't know what it is.
Well, neither do I. I suppose you've been sounded.
Yes, of course. There's nothing wrong with any of the organs, and nothing special anyhow. But I have this curious aching. I don't know where. I can't localize it. Sometimes I think it's my heart, and sometimes I suspect my spine. It doesn't exactly hurt me, but it unsettles me completely. I feel that something is going to happen. And there are other symptoms. Scraps of tunes come to my head that seem to me very pretty, though they are quite commonplace.
Do you hear voices?
No.
I'm glad of that. When my patients tell me that they've made a greater discovery than Harvey, and that they hear voices, I lock them up.
You think I'm mad? That's just a suspicion that has come across my mind once or twice. Well, tell me the truth. I can bet it.
You're sure there are no voices?
Quite sure.
Then it's only foolishness.
Have you ever seen anything like it before in your practice?
Yes, often. It's very common between the ages of 17 and 22. It sometimes comes on again at about 40 or thereabouts. You're a bachelor, you see. It's not serious if you're careful.
About my food?
No, about your behaviour. There's nothing wrong with your spine, there's nothing wrong with your heart, but there's something wrong with your common sense. You're not going to die, but you may be going to make a fool of yourself. So be careful.
I see you don't believe in my discovery. Well, sometimes I don't believe in it myself. Thank you all the same. Shall we have Walpole up?
Oh, have him up. He's a clever operator, is Walpole, although he's only one of your chloroform surgeons. In my early days, you made your man drunk, and the porters and students held him down, and you had to set your teeth and finish the job fast. Nowadays, you work at your ease, and the pain doesn't come until afterwards, when you've taken your check and rolled up your bag and left the house. I tell you, colleague, chloroform has done a lot of mischief. It's enabled every fool to be a surgeon.